out there who were committed to their families but still had a longing for sexual freedom.
But listeners are also treated to how Howard feels about the most intimate details of Allison's life. Details that often shock her friends.
A guy who looks that good, I wouldn't have to work on you for hours to get you aroused.
I mean, he spoke on the air about her technique with her vibrator. He spoke on the air all the time about, my wife won't do this in bed, my wife won't do that in bed. She said that one of the ways she started to cope with this on-air personality that lived with her was to just decide, there are 3 people in this marriage. Me, this wonderful man I married, and this crazy nut who goes on the radio and says all these embarrassing things every morning.
The guy that comes home I love, so I have a
She hates the guy on the radio.
She will not be the last person to make the observation that there are 2 Howard Sterns. The shy, private Stern, who keeps to himself even at home, still entrances his friends.
My every movement is important.
But he is on the radio. Of course that's Howard, and that's part of Howard, but he's not the Howard that meets me before the show or after the show and gives me a hug and we talk quietly about very different subjects.
At 39, Stern is the fiercely protective father of 2 girls, Emily and Deborah, with a 3rd, Ashley, on the way. But the demands of his schedule are taking their toll.
Allison likes to keep me locked up in the house, so I've got to talk about Allison.
That's true. I think you like to keep me locked up in the house.
Her biggest problem was that he didn't take her out enough. I wish we would just go to the movies. That's how she would talk. And it was funny because I thought, wow, what a simple, common problem.
Howard really loves his family a lot. He also really loves his work a lot. It becomes a bit of an addiction, and it can take you away from your family, even if you're in the same house with them.
Howard prefers to remain in his secluded $1.83 million Westbury, Long Island home. He spends most of his time in the basement, as he tells his listeners, working or watching adult videos on the VCR.
People said to me, oh my God, you must feel like you arrived. Like, how do you feel inside? And I tell you, I feel like a moron. My father called me a moron my whole life, and I guess it stuck with me. I feel very much like nothing's changed.
Certainly nothing has changed his flair for controversy. In 1995, after the beloved Latin pop singer Selena is shot, Stern makes fun of her music on air to the accompaniment of mock gunfire.
Oh my God. Tex-Mex Madonna. Spanish people have the worst taste of music. They really do. Alegría, you know what that means. Slowly.
It is a rare misstep for the man who always seems to know the outer limits of acceptability. The Latin community is outraged and forces Stern to apologize.
Aún más angustia.
But his popularity just continues to grow. By 1996, he's carried by 34 stations and is earning an estimated $17 million a year. Immeasurably successful in radio, TV, and print, there's only one challenge left: movies. He decides to attempt the near impossible, a film version of Private Parts with himself in the lead.
150, take 1, aim more!
Stern tackles this new challenge with a characteristic lack of humility.
Oh, if I don't win the Academy Award, I'm going to be shocked.
But behind the scenes, Howard works long hours to learn his new craft and heavily promotes the film on his radio show. The film catapults Stern to a whole new level. Earning $42 million, Private Parts gives Stern access to an even larger audience and brings him new legitimacy as a performer. Howard Stern proclaims himself the king of all media, and he may just be right. 2 years later, Stern publishes another bestseller and gains more markets, more viewers. By 1998, he is being heard by 9 million weekly listeners on radio alone. Howard is on top of the world, but his dance between the world of sleaze and the world of Family Man is about to cost him the person he loves most. Coming up.
I said, Howard, when you talk about other women's body parts and what you'd like to do, that's cheating on your wife.
Howard Stern's professional life is moving from strength to strength. He is an unsurpassed master of walking the thin line between gaudiness and decency.
Stern represents the vitality of the sexual impulse, of pure, raw, male, high testosterone desire.
And if he sometimes seems perilously close to committing actual infidelity on the air, he always remembers to stop.
I think that a lot of it was an act, you know. I mean, yeah, he would be very flirtatious, but from the way I take it, he really, really loves his wife, and this is his job.
I only do that for my radio audience, to have these massages and put myself into different sexual situations, because guys live vicariously through me.
His long-suffering wife, Allison, is his anchor, and his fidelity helps listeners to feel that Howard is, despite his fame, still down to earth.
Howard once told a friend of his that if he ever lost Allison, he would lose a part of himself, and he would become like every other sanctimonious celebrity jerk out there.
But on October 25th, 1999, Howard announces his separation from Allison.
We're just having a tough time being married right now.
Well, wait a minute. You're not divorced.
We're just trying to take a break and get some downtime.
Get some perspective.
Yeah, because things haven't been good for a while.
Howard and his wife Allison, they were together for 21 years, which by Hollywood standards, as we all know, is really a lifetime.
Howard's fiercely loyal inner circle is closed-mouthed about the breakup, but some media watchers suspect it is Allison who asked for the split.
He is career-driven. He is with blinders on. And how wonderful to have a husband that is going that way and not going other ways.
Howard tries to continue on, business as usual, but his world starts to crumble.
He comes to the studio early and when it's dark out, he's got his driver. So that's a terrible way to live, too. He's got tremendous guilt that he's no longer with his wife. He's got to have tremendous guilt that his 3 children are saying, that he's got to go over a friend's house, use their house so he can spend time with his 3 children.
I know that he was very upset and sad about the separation.
But it is not just Stern's personal world that is collapsing. In the 5 months after the split, Howard's ratings take a nosedive. He loses 750,000 of his weekly listeners, according to Arbitron surveys. Some don't think it's a coincidence.
He's left Allison, and Allison is a huge part of his persona. The fact that he's this married, schlubby, put-upon, suburbanite guy was part of what allowed him to go out there and be this leering, sexual, predatory thing and have people laugh at it. But when he's actually out there playing the field, all of a sudden, it's not quite as funny.
Howard and Allison divorce, and he begins to live the glamorous bachelor life he always said he wanted.
The self-proclaimed king of all media is reportedly becoming a $100 million man.
In 2000, he signs a lucrative 5-year contract to continue his radio show. For the sake of his now teenage daughters, he imposes a radio silence on his love life. He is censoring himself in a way he never had to before.
I don't think he's stretching the envelope anymore. If you listen to a show on a consistent basis, it's basically all the same.
But in 2004, Howard once again finds himself at the center of a controversy. On February 24th, he interviews Rick Solomon, who videotaped himself having sex with Paris Hilton. The next day, Clear Channel Communications suspends Stern's radio show in 6 cities, saying Howard used explicit language. Talking about sex is nothing new on Howard's program, but broadcasters are coming under increased pressure to remove offensive content as the government cracks down on indecency in the wake of Janet Jackson's breast-bearing performance at the Super Bowl. A short time later, Howard tells his listeners that he believes his suspension was politically motivated.
All I know is his beloved religious right and the fellowship started by Ed Meese when he got out of prison. And the rest of these religious nuts are all partying because they've been organizing against me for years and years and years, and now it's all coming together under their president. Isn't it amazing that George Bush is so tied in with Clear Channel that just fired me because, by the way, guess who paid him all the money for that Fakakta baseball team that he got into and suddenly made a $14 million profit, even though he ruined that team?
Clear Channel.
Clear Channel.
Clear Channel denies that politics played a part in the decision. Stern is later back on the air in those 6 cities on stations owned by Infinity, the company that syndicates his show.
Good morning, everybody.
But soon, Howard won't be on any AM or FM stations. In October 2004, he decides to move his show to satellite radio in 2006.
I have 2 full channels that I can program, and it's like a renaissance for me. It's a rebirth.
The phenomenon that's Howard Stern is far from over. But people have always wondered, who is the real Howard Stern?
The real one would be the guy on the air. And I say that because I've had a lot of introspection on this topic. I believe I'm role-playing in my everyday life. And I think that the real Howard Stern is the guy on the air. I changed my opinion on that. That was my line for many years. I think it's important to own both sides of my personality, if you will. It's not fair to say that the guy on the radio is me and the guy off the radio isn't me. It's all me.
Even though it sounds like a cliche, I think there's truth in it. He says what everyone else is thinking.
I take people into my life. I take people into a journey of my life that I think few performers are willing to open up to.
The shock jock who has been exposing his private parts for more than 20 years is in a new phase of his life. And his fans are riveted, waiting, as always, to see what he will say next.
I'm going to take over the world, and everyone watch out. You're in big trouble.
So, like him or not, you have to admit that his brash attitude has stretched the boundaries of what can be said out loud on the airwaves, raising the question, are there any barriers left to break? And if there are, will Stern be the one to break them? I'm Matt Lauer. Thanks for watching.